Victoria Jaquiss first played and taught steel pans at Foxford School in Leeds in the 80s, and now she's, since 1996, been Steel Pan Development Officer and Head of Steel Pans for Leeds Art Forms Music Service.
So, I am Victoria Jaquiss. I've been playing steel pans for 30 odd years, and I've just been so inspired by Mila's presentation just now, and also taken back to when I myself played in Carnival Messiah back in, not at Harewood, but the two beforehand in 2002, 1999. Speaking unspoken maxim, that if it's fun it must be bad for you, was in my experience knocked on its head by the arrival of steel pans of Western Europe, of West Indian Carnival. Here, pleasure is good for you, for your self-esteem, for your mental and your physical health. This here is my first experience of Leeds Carnival, and as you can see, those of you who know Leeds, coming up Harehills Avenue, up Harehills Lane, the old Ford Green before it became a supermarket, aka Johnny Mitchell, knocked down Paradise, built a supermarket. I'm standing on a float. I'm not the best player in the world, but I was good enough for this. And we were all playing together in this common cause, and I got that intense, ecstatic feeling of being at one with the people I was with. And also, which I think Mila also mentioned, interacting with the crowds around. I felt very close to them. We were on one of those low floats at the time. Now, I've been a lifelong anti-racist campaigner, and it was really exciting to be with all these people marching in this common cause. Felt on the fringes, both socially and musically, and I now felt included and welcomed. On the right, this is where I started to play at Notting Hill, where I first met Pepe all those years ago, with Nostalgia marching band. And although this isn't as clear, it might be clearer to you, there again is that intense feeling, and a much bigger band here marching and all the way down Ladbroke Grove. It was amazing. And we had to dress up at Greeks. It was Greeks in 2012, and again this massive experience to demonstrate. Absolutely mind-blowing. Steel pans in the UK, I would say that date from three things. Come across with TASPO, the Trinidad All Steel Percussion Orchestra, 1951, playing the Festival of Britain, through the community bands and through education coming into schools. When they played at the Festival of Britain in 1951, there was always that famous quote from Sonny Roche. That was the question. That every Englishman, obviously, and woman, would own their own pan after they had left. And then the sad thing was that he himself was too ill to play on the particular event. And they played, and this is a very famous picture of them playing at the Festival of Britain. The Windrush generation coming across sort of in the 50s included my friend, the late and very much missed Sonny Marks, who came from St Kitts in the 1950s. He met up with Wilf, and they formed a band called the Caribbeans. I don't know if there's any Leeds people here, but the Caribbeans were real pioneers. Sinclair Morris, who's my first teacher, Chris's first teacher, and Wanda's first teacher. And he created Paradise Steel Band, also from Leeds. Other steel bands from the north, and this included people who came from the West Indies with the pans and their skills, was the North Stars from Huddersfield and the Gay Carnival Bosco Band from Leeds, Esso also from Leeds. And then, of course, Arthur in France and other people, not Arthur in France, sorry, Arthur France in Leeds and various people around the UK were bringing, setting up carnivals, approaching their councils to have them officially in their towns. And the third way they came in now is in schools, and that was through something called Section 11 money, which is where in response to various vicious riots in the UK, the government brought a government act in, which said that if any institution or school could think of a good reason that would combat racism or develop multiculturalism, they would provide funds for it. And many schools bought steel pans. Now, at the time I worked in a very deprived white working class estate where the National Front was knocking on the doors of our gates all the time, and my head teacher, Mr. Spooner, bought a set of pans for us as a positive example of a black culture. Other schools, there was one in Bradford, bought a set of steel pans, and then only offered them to students of African or Caribbean heritage. And I can only imagine how that went down generally. You know, I think that was a mistake to do that. Paradise Steel Band with Sinclair in the middle. The Caribbeans, here with Wilf and Sonny. This is Sonny Marks through the publicity shot. And this is phase 1 from Coventry. And thanks to Max's research, I was able to say that in 1967 the first bands were the Gay Carnival Steel Band, the Invaders, St Christopher Steel Band from Birmingham, one that he doesn't know the name of from Manchester. In 1982 we had North Stars, Bosco, Paradise, Regal and Star Quality from Manchester, Contrast from Leicester, and in 1984 the New World Band was formed to carry on the tradition and have a much bigger band, as I understand. Sweet Melody was a band set up in Huddersfield by Garvin Dabrew, whose father was a Trinidadian. Garvin made his television debut at the age of 11 on Crackerjack. Sweet Melody, they went everywhere. They were prolific. Nottingham, Liverpool again, Leeds here. This band now included Jenny Stott, sadly died very young, and one of my own students, and Garvin's wife, and they were started to be where people playing in the bands began to include white, English, British players. So they were moving more into mainstream now. And New World, and the first time I played Carnival, I was asked to play Carnival by Dudley Nesbitt, and I said, I can die now. You've asked me to play Carnival. I don't even need to play it. I am in heaven. I was in ecstasy. And even better that we were on one of these more old-fashioned floats where you were pulled along, not the same as that rack that you saw from the back, the 60s, but we were being pulled along by a tractor.
Yeah, that's right.
This is myself in my moment of ecstasy. This is me nailing down a stand. So I wasn't just playing, but I was included in the mechanics of setting up, and that made me feel more included in the bands. So, what I'm painting is a scene of busy steel bands in the 70s and the 80s, and in the 90s as well. In all the northern cities, Liverpool, Leeds, and everywhere. And when I went to see Garvin a couple of weeks ago, he got his medals out. And just think the contrast of his kitchen, that is a microwave, not a medal, and and these trophies, it's massive recognition. And then also when Dudley and I ran our band together, my trophy from 1997. A drummer friend of mine once said, people don't play for money, you know, this is what they play for. And it is a great buzz. Applause is a great buzz. It doesn't put food on the table, but it just gives you that feeling that you could keep going without food. Don't try that. Right, now bands are beginning to move into British local and political events. And I said to you that I am a political activist, so I campaign, I've been resisting just about everybody all of my life. So here we are, we get to play summer fairs. Wanda, my friend who runs a band over in Alton, we play summer fairs, we play civic events, that kind of thing all the time. But here we are outside the arena when the Grand Départ, which is part of the Tour de France, started. And here, this was a 25-piece steel band made up of our 3 bands put together. And here is we're marching for Leeds Pride, hence all the rainbows. And here we are playing at an NUT rally. So I'm a steel pan, I didn't say, but I'm a steel pan teacher. And although I started off as an English teacher, now all I do every day is go around different schools and different parts of the country, just teaching steel pans, setting up, advising on purchase and that kind of a thing. And here we are playing at the NUT rally. And again, we call this Leeds Band Central because basically anybody on strike, anybody on maternity leave, anybody not at work today, obviously not if you're ill, or come in disguise if you're ill, and then we played for the strike. Also pans, sort of born out of resistance, still you being used for resistance, which I find entirely appropriate. Right, so pans are going mainstream now. This is the bands now entering the world music component of Music for Youth. And they've got a whole section, the whole afternoon is devoted to steel pans and Leeds. And this is a local carnival, which is not a West Indian carnival, it's a local English carnival with all the associations of May Day and Queens and things. But they always ask us to play at their carnival every year. A friend, Damien from Manchester, decided that enough was enough and he was going to get a grant and he was going to get steel bands and put them back in Manchester Carnival. and he got, let me have a look, I'll read my notes here. Someone put the light out, I can't see them. Right, so we got Foxwood and New World, 2 bands from Manchester and North Stars. Playing at the side of the park was Hilton Maynard, who comes from an outfit called Panasonic in Manchester. So while we were gearing up at the side of the road, he was playing with us. We'd call out what key we're in, and he would play along. He declined the invite to go on the float. I don't think he wanted to be locked in with us for 4 hours as we went. They were looking for somewhere to put their banner, so they put it at the side of our float, and it was Unite Black Workers section, and they got up and they became our percussionists, and that's now something that we do every year. On the anniversary, logistics of getting 25 kids, enough staff to make sure the people who were going to wander off could be caught before they wandered too far, getting a van full of all that metal, doing the risk assessments, trying to drive through London, remembering to get the congestion charge and everything. It was a massive enterprise, and we didn't get paid for it. We didn't get paid anything. We had to fundraise just to take ourselves there. But we didn't mind. We absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. More buzz than I can't. Had a whole hour to go at, and it was fantastic. Then we played in the Claw Ballroom, which I might have a picture of in a minute. Compare that to a sound system. Does the generator need a risk assessment? Possibly it does. Steel bands are built out of, massively important. So you say carnival, and what do you think of? You think of parades, costumes, steel pans. That's what I think of. So for tradition, for inclusion and empowerment, and these are just various pictures I think of Leeds and other carnivals. And for that intense pleasure that Mila mentioned as well, you know, that does you good spiritually. I think it was for enjoyment. I thought it was going to... How's it difficult? This is an email I had last week. I am sorry, Victoria, but we do need a PLI certificate that actually names the bands, groups, individuals covered by it, and the PLI certificate you sent to us, does the 5,000k self-insured retention mean that the individuals have their own cover for this? I thought just the band leader. I've arranged songs, I've booked the van, in fact I've bought a van, and now I've got to pay money so that I don't damage somebody from me falling off the float. I think you can gather by now that I think playing steel pans and at Carnival, its traditional home, is the best thing in the world. Do you all know about Tambu Bamboo? You will do, don't you? Following. Got banned. In the 1930s, I think, it was replaced by steel pans after Tambu Bamboo was banned for sounding too threatening. But I think it was intended to sound threatening. I think that was a good thing. And also, about the 50s and 60s, the steel band was associated with gang culture. Somebody wrote in 1959, he said, the early summer months of 1945 had seen rivalry developing between the bands. Trinidad, like every other country in the world, was caught up in the whirlwind of juvenile delinquency and hooliganism. In Trinidad, the eye of the wind seemed to catch the steel band. Steel bandsmen would continue to play while the fights, riots and general mayhem was taking place all around them. So, I mean, it became like, oh, this is exciting, I'm going to go off and play steel bands and it might get dangerous. But I think that's a bit like blaming Cliff Richard, Elvis Presley and Bill Haley for the decadence of modern youth in the 1950s. I've always regarded Trinidad and Tobago, steel pans as Trinidad and Tobago's gift to the world. And a very fine gift it is too. North Stars in this beautiful, this is the one bit of Barrack Road on the Leeds Carnival route where there isn't an audience, but the Carnival route in Leeds is really good because Roundhay Road and Chapeltown Road and Hare Hills are really packed with people. You get a bit of a break where you jump off and have a wee behind the little grassy bank on Barrack Road. When I took the Sparrows to the Albert Hall, we said we're going to get flags now to make it a more visual thing, not just the pans are visual and beautifully visual in themselves, but we're going to get flags. And we counted 19 different nationalities going back to grandparents out of 25 kids. I kind of like playing on the ground at carnivals. This is Huddersfield Carnival where you're merging into the audience. And here one of our players is a wheelchair user. Very easy for a wheelchair user to get into a steel band. A force for inclusivity, social cohesion, empowerment and pleasure. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.